All right, well, welcome back. Happy Wednesday or whatever day you're watching this video. This is episode 74. So far, we've been learning about these atomic nuclear bomb people, and we've read descriptions of them. We've seen what they look like, what they do, and what it all results in. And I think it's easy to understand the concept of these people and the theory of it all. But in our verses today, Paul intensifies the discussion. One of the things that he really drives home here is that these atomic bomb people are not just words on a page. This isn't some make believe idea. We're not being over dramatic here. Paul wants you and I to know definitively that these atomic nuclear bomb people are real. This isn't a fairy tale. It's not a ghost story. These people are actually in the world. This stuff really happens. This is a real threat. These are real people. And in our verses today, verses 8 and 9, Paul shows us how serious and how real this is by talking about two guys in history who would be considered atomic nuclear bomb level dangerous. So let's get into it, starting in verse 8. Just as Jannes and Jambres opposed Moses. One of the first questions that we have to ask is, who are these Jannes and Jambres guys? And to answer this question, we have to go all the way back to Exodus 7. Jannes and Jambres, they were two of the magicians who worked for Pharaoh. And they were supposed to have more wisdom and understanding than anyone else in the kingdom. They were supposed to be the keepers of secret knowledge and all things divine and supernatural. And something that is so funny. Do you remember when Aaron and Moses start doing miracles in front of Pharaoh so that they can prove that the one true God has sent them, right? And that God has actually spoken to them, let my people go because God said so. And then boom, here's a miracle. And so you Egyptians better leave us alone now and let us go. And so, Aaron throws down his staff, then it becomes a serpent. Do you remember all that kind of stuff? Well, something that is so funny, when Moses and Aaron start doing miracles, like turning the water in the Nile River to blood, then the magicians run over and they do the same thing, which is really stupid because in trying to show how powerful and how smart they are, they actually destroy more of Egypt's water supply. And the same thing happens in chapter 8 when Aaron stretches his hand over the waters of Egypt and then frogs come up and they cover the land. Guess who runs over and makes even more frogs appear in the land? Jannes and Jambres. Can you imagine being an Egyptian? You'd be like, Jannes, Jambres, stop. You're making things worse over and over again. You guys are actually really dumb and evil. And the only good thing that they maybe ever say is in Exodus 8:19, when plague number 3 comes around with the gnats, and the magicians aren't able to replicate that plague. And listen to what they say. They say, this is the finger of God. What can you do with your finger? Maybe you can maybe pick your nose. You can poke your sibling, basically nothing. What can God do with his finger? He can lay waste to an entire nation. The magicians realized they don't have any power or any authority. And by the time that plague number 6 comes around with the boils, the magicians can't even stand before Pharaoh because the boils are also on them. And on one hand, the Exodus story, it's funny because the magicians are so stupid and they just make things worse over and over again. They're like Dumb and Dumber. But on the other hand, the Exodus story reveals how evil Jannes and Jambres really were. They were boastful and arrogant. They were blasphemers and unholy, unloving. They were devilish and satanic. They were brutal and haters of good and reckless and treacherous. These guys were atomic nuclear bombs. They helped lead the downfall and destruction of their nation, of the nation of Egypt. And the same way, Paul says, look at these next phrases. So these men also oppose the truth. Men of depraved mind, worthless regarding the faith. Paul says, Timothy, just as it was back then with Moses, so it is now. Even in your day in Ephesus, Timothy, there will be more men like Jannes and Jambres who will stand against the truth. Everything that's been revealed to us by God, they fight against that. Their minds are warped and twisted because of their sin, and they are therefore worthless regarding the faith. They're of no use. They can't contribute to anything godly. And as bad as all of this sounds, verse 9 reminds us, but they will not get very far. It's to say that God puts a restriction on the amount of influence that they can have. And they don't get very far because look at this next phrase. For their folly will be obvious to all, just as Jannes and Jambres' folly was also. Paul says, listen, if you've learned the lesson of Jannes and Jambres, if you've learned that though these men had incredible influence and power in Pharaoh's court, eventually, because they were these atomic nuclear bomb people, whenever the bomb went off, so to speak, their foolishness and their stupidity and evil became known to everyone. God ended their reign. They didn't get very far. And Paul's big point is this: get away from them. They will explode and try to take everything and everyone down with them, including you if you're near them. So get away from the blast zone. It's almost like this. Let's pretend that you are in a meadow. And note, I tried to draw my most flat, straightest line. So just pretend this line, this meadow is as straight as can be, okay? And here is a guy, and he's standing right here. And he's just casually walking around. But there's a crazy thunder lightning storm, the worst that you've ever seen, the worst lightning storm of all time. And what does this guy do? He gets two giant metal poles and he just starts walking around casually. And it's like, are you crazy? Why would you have giant metal poles? There's a lightning thunderstorm going on here. And here are you. You're right here. Now, what should you do? Should you run towards this guy? Absolutely not. Why? Because then you get struck by lightning. What are you supposed to do? You're supposed to get away, run for your life, get out of there. Because if this guy gets struck by lightning and you're near him, you could also what? Get struck by lightning. These are the people who will kill your ministry, who will cause your ministry to not endure, who stand against everything that God stands for. So get away from them and do not let them have any kind of foothold in your life or in the church.
Episode 74, and we are talking today about the atomic bomb nuclear people. First question: how far can one of those people make it in life? We see Jannes and Jambres made it pretty far. They were way high up in Pharaoh's court. He called on them immediately, but we see their end. Second question: is there anybody at one point in your life that you have really, really liked, really, really trusted that turned out to be one of those people? Maybe it was a pastor that turned out to be a heretic and go off on his own way. Maybe it was a celebrity that you're like, oh, they're a Christian, and then you're like, oh, maybe not. But yeah, who is the one that we can place our trust in? And are you more careful of those people now? Or do you have your goggles on looking for these people? All right, that is it. We will see you guys tomorrow.